Hello, my name is Catherine Rains, and I'm a mixed media collage artist. And welcome to Tune In Tuesday, where I share weekly art demos to help expand your mixed media toolbox. This week, we're going to make the most gorgeous collage papers using glass marbles on 7 different types of paper. And if you stay to the end, you'll catch a bonus paper, which is actually not a paper, it's tape, 2 different kinds of tape. So make sure that you catch that one at the very end. All the supplies for these papers are linked below to make it easy to find them. And while you're down there, I would love if you would subscribe and also check out the free workshop, Collage Kickstart, where you will learn how to use all the papers that you make during Tune In Tuesday to make incredible collages the first try. So let's jump in to making papers with glass marbles. Again, we're going to be making glass marble papers, and there's 2 reasons why I chose to do this particular paper. The first is I got so many comments from people saying, why don't you just use marbles instead of water beads? And let me show you why. This is a marble. When you drop a marble, it drops. It'll roll, but it doesn't create any kind of impression. When you take a water bead, it looks the same, but actually it bounces. And when you bounce something, it actually creates an impression of the bounce. So for instance, these papers, these are all little bounces from the water beads, which I can't create with a marble. The marble, I can create these lines, but I can't create the actual circles. So they actually do 2 very distinct things. And the second reason I wanted to do this particular paper was because I want to take all the papers that I've been making, let's say for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and turn them into a collage. And I want to show you how I would do that. The only issue with doing that is that these are the papers I've made so far. So I've made this is last week's, which is a water bead, water gel bead. And then this is Suminagachi with color. This is Suminagachi with black and white. And I need some papers that don't have so much activity in them. So these I thought would be just a nice, simpler kind of profile to add to my collage fodder, particularly just the black and white, but also papers that have kind of less color because, and I'm going to say this name wrong, but when you have papers that where the colors are right next to each other on the color wheel, I can see it in my brain. It's like analogous. I cannot pronounce this to save my life. But so they're just quieter, and that's what I need. I wouldn't say these are as quiet, but they do add some contrast in terms of interest to the kind of papers I want to use for the upcoming collage project. Let me show you what you need to make these papers. First, you need marbles. So I actually will have a link to this particular marble set. This is all different size marbles, which I think is really cool. There's lots of different sizes, and this costs so cheap. I don't know, it was less than 10 bucks for all of these. You also need some kind of box. Now you can just use a paper box. You don't need to use one of these. This is an IKEA box. I have a huge collection of this brand because it stores a lot of my art supplies. So you need a box because you need to actually roll things within some walls. Very similar to last week, but because they don't bounce, you don't need high walls. I highly suggest getting spoons. Now, I did all of my sample papers for this using just 1 spoon, and it was a pain because I had to keep cleaning off the spoons so that I didn't basically mix all the colors together, which I didn't want to do. Some of the colors I'm okay with mixing, but like I want some colors just to be white or some colors just to be black. So having multiple spoons, I just bought these off Amazon, by the way. I have a link to these too. They're incredibly cheap. And you do need some cups. So something that you can mix your marbles with paint in. And of course, you need paint. Now as I had mentioned last week, I am pretty much sticking to 3 primaries. So this is a Philo Blue Green shade. This is Hansa Yellow Light. I'm also going to be using some white and some black. But that's all the colors I'm using for all of the papers in all of the series that I'm going to be using. That way, any papers I make, they'll all go together. That's the kind of the goal of this. The way we're gonna do this, I'm gonna start with taking one of my cups, and I only really need 4 marbles. So I'm gonna put some, actually I have 2 different size marbles in here too. I don't know if that's, probably won't make a difference. So I'm going to mix these up, and I'm also gonna add a tiny bit of water, because I do want it to be a little bit liquid, not much, but I want it to be a pretty solid color. Now what I wanna do is show you 8 different papers that I've been making these on. And the first one, probably my very favorite paper of all time, this is a rice paper. It's got a little bit of markings on it. Actually, let me get a cleaner one. Here's a clean one. So I'm gonna take a marble and put one, they're already starting to move, in each corner. Oops, okay, there you go. And one right here. I may have put too much water on this, we'll see. And then you just start moving them. I mean, this sounds like, you know, incredibly technical here, right? Okay, so we got that. Good, you know, you have to kind of know when to stop, because I don't want to fill the whole page up. I think I'm going to put a few more marbles in here. Add a little more of that blue paint. And this time I'm going to add some white paint. Oops. Helps if you actually take the lid off. And really, I can just like mix them this way. I don't. Ooh, that's nice. Maybe I want a little more white paint, because I want it to be a contrast to the blue I already have. And this is really how I'm making these papers. Something I'd really want to use in a collage, because I'm making them in colors that they all go together for one thing. You know, I'm not just splatting any kind of color down here. It's very deliberate in how I'm doing it. So let's get a second layer on here. See what happens. See, I really like that a lot. I'm gonna get rid of the marbles. These marbles, by the way, if you saw me last week with the water gel beads, they were so hard to pick up because they're small and squishy. This is actually quite easy to pick up. Now, just this right here, this is actually a beautiful collage paper, and it doesn't have a lot going on, which I actually like. Now, this corner here, and I'm not crazy about, but, you know, like right here would be a beautiful collage element. So would this. Now, I actually want to make a plain black and white one, so I'm actually getting rid of this box only because there's blue paint in it. I'll put another box down. And I am going to put just a plain piece of copy. This is a piece of copy paper. This is a 28-pound copy paper. And I want to make just black and white, which is actually one of my favorite favorite combinations, because I can just use black and white in a lot of my collages. So I want to have that as an element, or a So I have a problem with not sealing these up. Anybody else have that problem? There you go. You know, I actually come back to my studio and see that, oops, see, I get stuff all over me. Now I don't want to use this spoon again, because it'll turn that, it'll turn this blue, and I don't want blue. I really want a black. Okay, so this is pretty thick. I didn't add any water to it this time. So I'm just gonna strategically place them in my 4 corners. Now this is the simplest paper with just one color. However, this is probably one of the more useful papers to have, you know, in my arsenal of possible collages. So again, the question is when to stop, and I think that's actually perfect right where it is. It helps to have more than one box. So this is actually my box from the water bead demo the other week. So this is a piece of watercolor paper. And another one of my favorite combinations with this is using just white. Because I think white on black is also a stunning piece of collage fodder. Let's add some white. So this box is so big, I can kind of like, you got room to put them all over the place. I don't have to actually put them on the paper. I'm telling you, having these different spoons is such a luxury, because I didn't have those when I was actually playing with this week. And look at that, just the stark white against this makes it like that, right there. I love that. And this is a piece of collage fodder that will absolutely get used. Plus, because it's watercolor paper, it's going to give me really beautiful edges. I can't do it this moment. I can't tear it because it's too wet. But I love that. So I'll bring this box back. This is another one of my favorite papers. This is homemade watercolor paper. And again, all of the supplies are going to be in the underneath the description when this is actually posted, which will be tomorrow. So I've got to do some editing to it before it actually works. Okay, so now I've got a nice teal. So I'm going to start with the teal color. Put that down to 4 corners. This is probably my favorite color. You know, it's funny because it's not really my favorite color, but it's my favorite color to make art with. So I ended up, a lot of my artwork has some version of this color. So, you know, I've been told so many times this is child's, you know, a child's project. And, you know, I'm willing to accept that. I guess I'm a child. But I really love what it does. What color should I add to this? Maybe, you know, white might be nice. Actually, the whites are right here. I never took them out of the thing. So I'm going to scoop them up, put them in here. So when I was making all my samples for this demo, kind of learning the ins and outs of this, I also had to clean out these. I was only using 1 container, and I was using 1 spoon. So this took me forever because I had to keep cleaning this out, because otherwise you contaminate your colors. So this is pulling up some of the teal, but I'm totally okay with that because it makes it more interesting. Okay, take that one up. This is one of my favorite papers. I think that is, I mean, that is going to just be a beautiful piece of collage fodder. Like, just imagine just cutting that little corner off and putting it in a collage. But it's not as busy as the other collage papers I've been making. So I want to do this on tissue paper. So I have 2 kinds of tissue paper that I've pulled out. This particular tissue paper is what I use for almost all of my collages. People ask me all the time what I use. This is cheap gift grade. I actually buy it from Uline, but this is what you buy, you know, at a drugstore. So it is nothing to write home about. You know, it's very cheap, but and it's not archival, so that there's some downsides to this. Okay, we're gonna do teal. It's here. I'm doing teal, but it's just barely teal. So it's mainly white. So if I add a little white to it, this really makes me feel like a mad scientist, you know? Okay, so I'm gonna add some white here. This is not totally sitting. Plus I've also put this tissue paper down in some wet paint, so there's already some teal on here. Ideally, I probably should have put this into a clean box because I have a couple of them sitting here. So I'm just gonna put these in the corners. Now, this tissue paper, this new way of making tissue paper with these designs is probably something I'm going to include in a class as well, because I just love the transparency of these, and these will just look really beautiful as a top layer for a collage. Let's pull this out. So picture that over something else. I also, let me show you, I made a bunch of these. Let me put this right here. I made a bunch of these just in white. I mean, that is like the most beautiful top layer for many of my collages. Now I wanted to show you one more paper that is new to me. And this is, if you know, are you familiar with Jane Monteith? She's a mixed media collage artist. So I'm gonna put down, actually this is the one that has some wet in it, but that's okay, I think. Hold on. I'm kind of learning my lesson here as I go. So I have a clean box. I'm gonna put this clean paper in. Now, what this paper is, this is tea bag paper. And tea bag paper is more substantive and it is archival. So it is a fantastic alternative to doing just cheap old paper. And I'm going to show you that it has the same translucency. And it's very similar in what it does, interestingly enough, to the cheap grade tissue paper. So I'm kind of leaning toward possibly switching to this. or at least doing it in addition to, because this is much more expensive. When you do cheap gift grade, you know, it doesn't cost very much. So now ideally, I probably should, because you see the ends are kind of coming up. It doesn't want to let go. Roll. Come on, roll. See, it wants to roll around itself, so that. Okay, so I actually took those two papers and I glued them, took a little strip of them and I glued them onto this to see how translucent they would be. And to be honest, I can't tell which one is which. But for the moment, they're pretty equal. The big advantage, though, is Jane Monteith's is archival. So I did one of, this is also, oh, here's the second one I lost. This is also the Jane Monteith's version of it. And that's a absolute going to be using that in a collage, because now I know it's going to dissolve. You know, so it's going to be completely transparent, which is why I use tissue in the first place. I want it to be transparent. Everything I'm using here, which isn't very expensive materials, other than the paint. The paint's a little more expensive. I use these Nova paints, but everything except for this is very inexpensive to do. And although, you know, people say this is a child's art form, I think you can elevate it by the colors you use and by layering colors, or just using black and white. You know, just having like this one right here, I'll show you. So I just think that is, I mean, it's the simplest thing to do, and it's gorgeous. So yes, it's for children, and it's also for adult children like you and me. So I'm totally in love with this. So here's the bonus part of this video. So, you know, for those of you who do mixed media art, you probably have a lot of these rolls of washi tape. Wouldn't it be cool to make some tape of your own? So that's what I want to show you using this method of using marbles. So I want to show you two different ways. And one is just using this artist tape. And again, this is linked in the description underneath this video. So this is archival tape. I also cut some of these are just smaller. And I'm going to put this in my box here. Now, by the way, I have put this tape onto, this is a plastic file folder. So, and I just put some cardboard inside of it just to make this more substantive, you know, to be able to lay down easily. And I could even actually store this long term on the file folder, so I wouldn't have to take it off the file folder. I just leave it like it is. So I think what I'm going to do is just use some of my black paint, take some of my marbles, take 4 of them, put some black paint on top. And do the usual, put one in each corner. And roll these around. Yeah, oops. Gotta have a little wrist action as you go here. So when this dries, I will take this off and I'll have very unique designs. So I did the same thing. This is the same tape, but I actually painted the tape black. Archival tape like this actually takes paint really well. And then I just rolled white on it. And so I'll take this off. So if I peel this off, I've got a very interesting, unique piece of tape that I can use as collage fodder. And it's customized washi tape, you know. So long term, what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to put it right back on here. I'll file this entire thing in my blacks. So I just have, it's just a really easy way to store this long term. Let me show you one more way of using tape. So I'll get a smaller box again. Now, this is parchment paper, and I have taken just strips of my packing tape and put it on the parchment paper. Now, I have tried this, what I'm about to show you, on those plastic file folders, but it wasn't as easy to pull this off. It's very easy when you put it on parchment paper. And again, I can store it right on this paper. This is very easy to file. So I'm going to put it in my little basket here. I think I'm going to do white this time. Add 4 in here. Again, do the same thing. Now, I just absolutely love that. And it's going to be a see-through element, transparent element that I can add to my collages. This is too wet for me to pull it up. But here is one in black and white. And it gave all this fascinating texture as it dried. And as you can see, this comes up really, really easily. You can see the tape just all by itself. It's going to just be an extra added layer on top of a collage that'll be an interesting element. But I'm going to store it right on the parchment paper, just file it like this. This is a pretty easy way to make translucent collage papers with marbles. Who knew? And I will see you next week. I'm going to do bubble paper next week. I'm looking at and researched about 5 different ways to do bubble paper, so I'm very excited. So goodbye, everybody, and I'll see you next week.